A warm welcome back to our viewers. This is Gitanjali Minhas and you're watching Checks and Balances. India's education system is going through a transition in a phased manner from 10+2 format to 5+3+3+4 format under the NEP 2020. This revamped model includes ages between 3 to 18 years of age and includes early childhood care and education and Anganwadis. NEP 2020 is a comprehensive and reformating framework for India's education system, which is holistic, flexible, as well as multidisciplinary in approach. Before NEP 2020, India had education policies of 1968 and 1986. In 2009, India enacted the Right to Education Act, which made primary education a non-negotiable and a fundamental right for children between the ages of 6 to 14 years. Right to education makes it compulsory on the part of the governments to provide free education to children, which also includes well-established schools to ensure this right and equity. Education as a sector has far-reaching effects. Though India's education sector has made strides, the fact remains that school dropout rate is high, there are infrastructure gaps, and cost of primary higher education is rising. Is National Education Policy 2020 an advance over RTE? Effectively, NEP is a much grander document that builds and expands upon the foundation that RTE lays. With a panel of education experts, we discuss some of the key issues of NEP 2020. Professor Shrinivasa Varakhedi is the Vice Chancellor of Central Sanskrit University. He's an academician, researcher, and administrator in Sanskrit studies and computational linguistics. He's authored 16 books and contributed various chapters in books written in multiple Indian languages and English.
NEP 2020 has been envisaged with a futuristic vision. We need to meet the aspirations of young India, and Right to Education Act is just limited to the school education, the school dropout students, and we wanted to bring them back, and we also want to continue the education till they reach adult age. NEP 2020 includes school-going children starting from the first standard and before that, and 3 to 8 and 8 to 11, 11 to 14 and 14 to 18. The range is beyond Right to Education Act, and also we have focused on higher education and holistic education starting from the young age to the research. Coverage is more and focus is different. It is more focused on the holistic education.
Professor Leena Wadia is the Dean, University of Transdisciplinary Health Sciences and Technology. She was also member of Dr. Kasturi Rangan Draft Committee of NEP 2019. She says, based on latest research, NEP aims to improve school education and how children learn and so on.
Since we committed to the RTE, we have improved school infrastructure, added teachers, and made sure that most children go to school. It's still not 100%. In many places, there are still children who are out of school. The brain development of a child, about 85% completed by the age of 6. So we realized that early childhood care and education, the Anganwadi scheme and so on, needed a lot of burnishing, and we also needed primary early childhood care centers attached to government schools. Now we have added the 3 to 6 year range as an area to focus on, and also maybe to train mothers and so on to deal with children younger than 3 years.
Dr. Shakila T.Shamsu is the former OSD, New Education Policy, Ministry of Education. She was also the Committee Secretary to the National Draft Education Policy. She was the Nodal Officer of National Mission on Teachers and Training.
NEP is more pedagogical and curricular and reform based on academic deliveries. The national curriculum framework itself, when it articulates that we need to allow students to get exposure in 8 curricular areas ranging from mathematics education, science education, social science, language education, arts education, physical education, vocational education, interdisciplinary areas of gender, technology and environment. complete range of reforms, not only in the academic, in school governance, in the idea of school clustering, assessment reform, much needed, the shift from rote learning to more innovative ways in which children can engage.
Almost 40% of children drop out of school and do not complete school education. Various reports have pointed out that 8th standard students are unable to do maths of 5th standard, and NEP aims to increase gross enrollment ratio to 50% by 2035. The Nipun Bharat Mission, under the broader comprehensive Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan of the Ministry of Education, aims to ensure foundational literacy and numeracy of all grade 3 children by 2026-2027 with required interventions. Considering India's population to make them global citizens, the quality of education of its people is of extreme importance.
So learning deficit is no doubt there, but the question is, we have recognized it, we are taking interventions to address that, we are conscious of the need for looking at formative assessment, looking at in-house activities that children need to do, give capacity building to teachers so that they are able to address that, but it is a Herculean task. You see, you cannot compare the numbers that we are talking of in the Indian context. The numbers we are talking are mind-boggling. You can't have the government of India giving diktats to the state. It can only be facilitating. That's why all the schemes are in a centrally sponsored manner, in which the government of India shares funding with the state governments, with a clear commitment from the states that they get the central funding on the basis of their commitment to achieve the desired both quantitative as well as quality aspects. The need for the intervention is there, not only for poor learning, but looking at gender, locational disadvantage, looking at the poor infrastructure. How do we build on that? We must give ourselves a kind of concession to say that work is on, work is in progress. We can't say that, this is a company which achieves a target. Education is a socializing process, ongoing process. Yeah.
The teachers' education, teachers' training is very much given importance. Today, the situation of school quality education is dependent on the quality of the teachers, quality of the infrastructure. Today, India, digitally, many countries do not have this infrastructure, and the teacher education is the real crucial complex issue, because we have recruited teachers, but they are not really trained in, theoretically they are trained, they are not really good in teaching. ITEP program, Integrated Teacher Education Program, focuses on not only the training the teachers, but to create the teachers. The student is undergraduate program will have to decide whether he wants to be a teacher. Earlier, after graduation, if they don't get any other chance, they come to the teaching profession. Now it is not so. You have to decide in your +2 program. Then you have to switch over to ITEP, where you will have whole 5 years training program along with your commerce, science education, and you will have teachers training. Apart from that, we have many programs like Nishtha, which trains the teachers in modern pedagogy. We have kept in mind that more than 4.5 million teachers will be covered within 2 years. And 2024, we have already crossed this number. And even in higher education, we have many training programs. And MMTS centers are established. More than 100 centers are functioning across India. Online education is given. And Parak, this program is also designed for outcome-based teaching and evaluation, and many such programs are envisaged and they are in pipeline, and some are continue to function. So with this, I think teachers training, we will be able to achieve the quality in education. And the perception about the education. Today, even the government system is thinking that we need to give more opportunities for the private schools, and government schools are not functioning well. Governments themselves are transforming. We need to give more opportunities for the government schools, because in rural areas, government schools are only the way for the children.
The states have been asked to fill in vacant positions. States have also been told to sort of do a kind of a mapping where they come to know, and also use in resources who could be retired teachers who can come in for mentoring, many such activities which can supplement the institutions facing these kind of human resource deficits. And then the training that is happening, teacher education itself undergoing a lot of reform in terms of the pre-service teacher education, which is becoming multidisciplinary. We will have a new crop of those teachers, but these existing ones need to be given hand-holding so that they are able to use the innovative pedagogies. And in addition to that, when we are talking about the technology interventions, in terms of PME Vidya scheme and so on. Just as we are talking about teachers becoming technologically competent to integrate it for enriched learning, students also need to have that. E-content also is being developed. We have developed an architecture for use of technology, which we call Endear, and we also have this whole idea that, all forms of digital resources sort of integrated together. Two things that remain a challenge. One is the digital divide itself in the context of country, and have a lot of responsibility coming in from CSR funds, and also our own attempt to have digital banks, just like we have book banks, where students who are less privileged could use these digital devices. PM Shri schools, which are exemplar schools, they're getting a lot of funds for ICT and for AI-based training, and in terms of coding and all the use of modern technology.
NEP emphasizes the use of mother tongue, regional or local language as a medium of instruction up till grade 5, preferably till grade 8 and beyond. Now till school level, this sounds welcome. But teaching specialized streams like engineering, medical sciences, etc. in regional languages sounds counterproductive and limiting.
Base of this inclusive education policy, I cannot question that why higher education, including medicine and engineering, is offered in Indian languages, because it is equal opportunity. If someone is getting education in English with his choice, with her choice, that's absolutely welcome. If someone wants to get the education in Hindi or Tamil or in any other Indian languages, he should have an opportunity. Higher education promises that we give you an opportunity to learn in your own mother tongue, if at all you want. If you don't want, it's okay. You have an option. But this option should not be questioned.
Many students deterring to join higher education because they underwent school education in a regional language, and when having to deal with English, decided not to join higher education. So to ensure that they could transit, we never said that you abandon English education. We said you go bilingual. We will help with materials in regional languages. And we have also added under the 4-year undergraduate program an ability enhancement course, which is a language ability enhancement. So we have not really undermined the importance of English as a link language and its importance for employment. But the spirit of this and the way in which it is getting sort of implemented in a very skewed manner is what is causing a lot of misunderstandings. Ethos of our country itself is to talk about multilingualism.
The Constitution provides for Hindi as the official language of the nation. The Official Languages Act of 1963 ensured the indefinite use of English alongside Hindi. Education is on the concurrent list, which means it's a state subject. This also means a state legislature can adopt any one or more of the languages or Hindi as its official language. The 3-language policy has also been part of the earlier education policies of 1968 as well as 1986. The present NEP 2020 does not impose the use of any specific language. Having Hindi as a third language has become controversial in southern states, Maharashtra as well as West Bengal. Having Hindi as a third language is being perceived as a threat to cultural and linguistic identity as well as federal autonomy.
3-language formula, Hindi is not compulsory, as was the case in earlier policies. In NEP 2022, you have freedom of choice. That means first R1, which is mother tongue. And mother tongue is introduced from the beginning. And the second language, the choice of the student, if at all English, people can go for English. Any other foreign languages, we don't have any problem. The third language, any other Indian language, that means no Hindi. For Tamil students, he can go for Malayalam, he can go for Gujarati, he can go for Hindi, he can go for any other Indian languages. Therefore, he will have more opportunities, then more connectivity with the rest of the world, with the rest of his state. And moreover, if some Tamil boy or girl comes to Hindi region, Gujarati, because nowadays it's a migration is nature of the Indian now. Languages are their pride, culture.
Absolutely.
And we need to preserve them. Therefore, this question is for those who are opposing. Why you are opposing? There is no reason. If you look at the job market, there is a myth that only English educated people will get the job. It is not so. And today job market is different. Even Indian languages are market languages. And in the market, everyone will learn a new language, but it takes time to change the mindset. Every average Indian student will learn at least 4 to 5 languages. The multilingual nation, and without any effort, I know more than 9 languages. My schooling never happened in English. I did my school education in mother tongue, my Kannada medium. Even Infosys Narayana Murthy, Sudha Murthy, all they did in their education in mother tongue.
Right.
And today they are the world.
What you are seeing as a reaction is where there has been an attempt to impose a certain language, which of course has caused this kind of reaction from many of the state governments. We have not said that. So multilingualism per se in a country which has 22 languages listed in the 8th schedule, which speaks 200 languages, not like any other European or Asian country. That linguistic plurality is what the NEP is trying to say should be given as a kind of a flexible option.
In the 68 and 86 policies, Hindi was mandatory. And the South Indian states, barring Tamil Nadu, did introduce Hindi. So South Indian states were doing English, Hindi and their regional language. What was the surprise was that North Indian states were not doing a third language at all. In fact, in many places, not even doing English. They were just doing Hindi. So the question was that why is it that some states are getting away with implementing 2 languages or 1 language and some other states are being pressurized into doing 3 language policy? Research tells us that young children's brains are wired to learn languages very, very quickly. They can learn 5, 6, as many languages, provided there are adults speaking to them consistently in that language. And then the kids who learn multiple languages have better cognitive abilities and they will retain their language abilities their whole life. And the fact that a lot of children come from non-regional language home backgrounds. The whole idea was that we should encourage as many languages as possible and we don't need to mandate Hindi anymore. Today, in a globalized world, English is a ticket to opportunity. NEP actually removed the requirement that Hindi is mandatory. Policy said any 3 languages and also opened it up to foreign languages, French and German or whatever. And also say that teach the children to speak those languages before the age of 10 so that we benefit from their natural ability to learn languages. We have been very careful to say that reading and writing should be only in 1 language. The problem comes because we have many schools which are single teacher schools. Children get very confused when the same person is talking to them in different languages.
NEP aims at empowering 3 major stakeholders, which is the students, the teachers, and the educational institutions. It is being criticized as being a wish list without an implementation schedule, including lack of clear timelines, resource allocation details, and specific steps for transitioning to the new system. A criticism against the NEP is that there are no details as to where these additional funds will come from.
Policies are written for the future. Sometimes we can't see the gaps. And there must be some gaps and flexibility in the policy. This is the nature of the policy. If you make every step SOP, then it is not policy. The policies are written in such a way that there is so much scope to include and change and modify according to the situation.
Absolutely.
Therefore, policies are not very clear SOPs. As we go with the policy implementation, we will now create a roadmap, very clear roadmap. Today already roadmaps are created, but it takes time, at least 10 years. And people should give them an opportunity. The students won't have any problem. Parents should give an opportunity for the system. This Indian education is not a small system. It's a very huge in the entire world. And we are very much confident once these students who are entering into the education stream come to the level of higher education, then you can see the change.
We used to have a forum where states and center could collaborate. It was called the Central Advisory Board on Education, CABE. And CABE, I think, hasn't met since 2014 or something like that. So there's no effort to carry the state governments along and to help them understand what they can do or not do and so on. And also not enough effort to help institutions understand what they are free to do and what they have to wait for regulations for. More than 90% of our children study in institutions that are controlled by state governments.
Whenever guidelines are brought, they don't indicate a date in which it needs to be implemented because institutions are at different levels of preparedness. That kind of a flexi autonomy that is provided to higher education institutions allows for taking up the reforms as and when they have achieved certain minimum levels of inputs that are necessary for implementation. As an educationist, I would say homogenization and uniformization is not a desirable thing, particularly when it comes to education, where you should allow multiple models. And a country as large as India must encourage multiple models for effective implementation. The gap between what may have been articulated in the policy and what may be taking place on ground is again colored to a very great extent by political agendas. And that is something which I think we must be very cautious and sort of concerned about.
India's education sector ranks 32nd globally, according to the US News and World Report. Since the Kothari Commission report in 1966, India's education policy aims to increase its spending to 6% of the GDP. However, till date, this aim has not been achieved. Allocating minimal funds to education is a grave misstep, for education is the cornerstone of development and economic growth. The national education policy emphasizes on integrating skills and vocational training with mainstream education to address India's unemployment challenges.
If you look at the data of 24, it is still 57% schools have computers, some 54% have internet and so on. So that is way off the mark decades after the computers have come and after the internet has come and social media has come. We are still lagging. Then how, without computers and internet, can the teachers even think about or learn about AI? Generative AI, for example. So the longer they are kept away from these kind of things, important learning resources, the worse it will become. For example, if you want to integrate vocational education to schools and colleges, you have to invest in more teachers, you have to invest in labs and, learning stations in schools, both primary and secondary. And the fact remains that state governments are spending what they say is the maximum they can, but there isn't enough money to invest in these things. The central government should prioritize development of human resources. Every country leverages its resources. We have human resources in plenty and our demographic dividend is on. There are some centrally sponsored schemes which central government is running, which state governments are happy to support because central government pays for it, but it always pays only for a small number of students. I gave an example that, it's running vocational education under the centrally sponsored scheme is running in 500 schools in Karnataka, whereas Karnataka has 15,000 schools. So where is the comparison?
The allocated funds are not even being utilized to the amount allocated. Inability of institutions to absorb these funds is also a glaring reality. All funds coming from the public exchequer in the coming years, at least as far as higher education, may seem to be quite difficult. We have to leverage public-private partnership. We need to leverage alumni funding. At the school level, we need to have support coming in from voluntary bodies. In some cases, it is more about not having effective leadership, which uses these funds in a very appropriate manner. And therefore, these funds are there. They are parked there. They are returned as unutilized funds back to the source itself, which is alarming in a country like ours. And that's because there is a need for training that needs to come in even on the financial utilization of allocated funds. Goal of reaching 6% has to be achieved if India, when saying that we are the country with the largest youth population and we want to become the soft capital for the world.
Last year's spending was 3.1%.
Okay.
It is UNESCO data, 3.1% approximately India spends on education, which includes all state, union, including other stakeholders spending. But this is half we are in the halfway. Not claiming that we have achieved this, but the target has to be achieved not only by the one government. All governments should support it. 6% of GDP is not only for the union government, it is for the rest of the state governments too. Last year spending was around 1 lakh crore of union budget. This year 25-26 it is 9.4% is increased in union budget, almost 10%. That means 1.28650 crore on education. This is this year's budget, and this is not spending, but this is the budget. The increase of budget itself shows that Union government is committed for higher education. Today, if we don't create the infrastructures, we cannot reach the rural areas. My personal experience is the Honorable Prime Minister is really working hard for the creating infrastructures and digital infrastructure, physical infrastructures and employability. Then education infrastructure will get natural focus. So this is 10 years plan, not 1 year plan. So suddenly jumping 3.1% to 6% will also create havoc in the education system. I don't want that much budget. Even if government gives me double of my spending today, tomorrow I cannot spend. That is the limitation of spending. Today many state governments, sanctioned posts are vacant, teaching posts are vacant. Even in many states, even if the amount is given, budget is given, they cannot really spend on that year because the vacant positions are vacant. They cannot fill it up within a year, then they cannot implement it. Therefore, it is a slow process. Definitely, we are progressing. Digital divide is the current reality, but we need not be skeptic. Even today, no nation, last person will have digital connectivity. In India today, even the daily wages workers will have a mobile. And mobile connectivity and the devices are available, accessible also, very cheap rate. Even the data is very cheap in India comparing to any other nations nearby. The major issue is analyze the data, and we have a new program called ABP. Optical fiber connectivity will be this year, it is 2.64 lakh GP. This will be increasing the connectivity to block to Gram Panchayat. We are really hopeful that every Gram Panchayat will have full-time connectivity, and then we can really solve the issue.
NEP aims to grant autonomy to higher education institutions. This has raised concerns of commercialization and exploitative practices at the hands of institutions, for it may lead to education becoming inaccessible and unaffordable for many students.
Looked at data in 2017. This number is staggering. 78% of higher education institutions were private and 45% of schools were private. How much more can you privatize in higher education? Best institutions are still, aspirational institutions are still the ones that are run by government, whether it is central universities or the IITs or IIITs or whatever. So this argument about commercialization should not kill a very important reform, which is autonomy. We are a diverse country, and we have to cater to diverse needs of students, and the teachers and the managements of institutions are the ones who see this need, and they have to be able to respond to it. They need to be agile. If they are waiting for directions from either the parent university or the government, then you just waste time without responding to the needs of the children. There should be more government institutions, but private institutions, many of them are doing a very good job. The accreditation was supposed to weed out the bad institutions. You really must weed out the bad institutions. You cannot allow them to continue and impact student lives. But until HECI comes and the accreditation does what it is intended to do, the bad institutions will continue to operate.
To say that all private institutions are commercialized is to stretch the argument too far. There are private institutions which ensure that whatever revenue is generated within an educational institution is plowed back for the educational development of its infrastructure and many other things that improve the quality of education. But blatant commercialization, the policy has clearly said that it would not allow exorbitant fees, it would not allow fake announcements by institutions giving glossy brochures, that they would take punitive actions. Giving autonomy does not tantamount that it would result in commercialization. That you need to do is ensure regulation of the fees, ensure that people who are meritorious but don't have the means get in through scholarship, ensure that it is not a profiteering activity. Autonomy is always desirable because education is all about giving freedom to institutions, navigate, to innovate, to come out with solutions to achieve the desired goals. If we have HECI coming out, that would ensure, these kind of aberrations, if at all they are taking place, would be nipped in the bud itself.
India is a very complex system of education. Here the players are coming from private sector and also government sector, and philanthropists are also here, and regional and religions practitioners are also stakeholders of education. The government alone cannot take the responsibility of the education. This is very complex. Because of the variety and belief sets of the Indians, we cannot deny it. We cannot bring them everyone to the same plane, and it is quite impossible. We need to have the checks and balances. And therefore regulations are very important. At the same time, regulations should really not be a barrier to do academic experiments.
Yeah.
Therefore, autonomy is for academic experiments, for their explorations based on the needs of the children. If someone has the capacity, he should be given an opportunity to pay more and get the education. But at the same time, economically deprived student should also get an opportunity. That is the responsibility of the government. And private, for example, in RTE, we have proposed that 25% seats are to be reserved for the economically challenged students, and that has resulted in India in a huge way.
The national education policy emphasizes on inclusivity. However, there are concerns as to how it will address the needs of marginalized communities as well as those with disabilities.
As far as disability is concerned, both physical disability as well as learning disability, a lot of interventions would be needed so that we are conscious firstly of their numbers, the mapping to the institutions around, and looking at school education through the cluster resource centers and so on, actually going home to home to ensure that these children are brought into integrated classrooms. Now the RCI, the Rehabilitation Council, along with the concerned departments, need to have joint strategies deal with children with such learning abilities. The policy has taken these into account and they have put them as a category that needs special intervention. But I think much more sustained action and effort needs to be done at the ground level to deal with that.
We actually expanded the definition of students who needed support from the system, and it's not just SCs and STs and OBC. It's not the regular caste classification. There are gender issues, there is geography issues. People who live in remote areas don't have access to schools, so there are children with different abilities, then poverty, poor children. And in fact, even the multiple entry and exit options in higher education was a measure of equity to enable children who have economic distress, and nearly 60% of the dropouts are because of economic reasons. So if you want to drop out for a year and then go and do some work, and then you want to continue your education, you're telling them you have to repeat that year. So you are kind of adding a double whammy, you're making them pay again for the first year. So we said that let them take a certificate and go and come back and rejoin. That kind of assembly line education that we have just now was intended to be dismantled, and we make the education, open it up, make it diverse, respond to the needs of the citizens, and yet maintain quality without an implementation plan, without involving educators and educationists in the implementation. We are making a mistake.
Policy has already addressed the issues. The only thing is, when we implement the policy, we need to chalk out the plans, increase the centers of learning for these unprivileged students. For example, as you said, students with disabilities. In India, it is really a really big question, and it is there is a taboo in the communities that they don't want to show up. Even I have seen parents who do not accept that their child has some disability, and this is a psychological problem. Even the educated parents do not admit that their child has some problem. They see that in the society, what do others think? What is their prestige? This is the issue of the state governments and union governments to implement them in a proper way.
There is no one size that fits all. Regional context has to factor in. Policy and politics should not mix when the ultimate goal is to empower the students, the teachers, as well as the institutions. Thank you for watching Checks and Balances.